All right, so let's see. In every friend group, unfortunately, there happens to be, especially for like adolescent, teens, there's usually the friend who's like the butt of proportionately more jokes than the rest of the friends are the butt of. At least the probability of someone like that being in a friend group kind of like approaches one. It's like a logistic curve as the friend group gets bigger and bigger. So, there's a friend group with a bunch of people who are kind of like a few grades above me who I was hung out with because we were like in similar math classes and we were all nerds. We did like math competitions and like the chess club and the science bowl and like all this kind of stuff. And so we had that friend in our friend group who we kind of fucked with relentlessly, but it seemed, he sort of like took it on the chin, and also he brought it upon himself. Not that I don't think we were so extreme to the fact that we had like a lasting impact on this person's mental health, but in what are very formative years socially, I regret to some extent how hard in the paint we went with like a few of our pranks. We didn't do anything too crazy or like life-threatening. It was mostly innocuous stuff, but we just really got a kick out of it. So what this guy would do a lot in his AP chemistry class. AP chemistry was like a double class. It was like 3 whole hours and a period was like an hour and a half, right? You're a bit of a bully, understandable. Looking back, I feel super bad. But at the time, I super didn't. So it was an hour and a half, it was 2 an hour and a half periods, like back to back. So it was 3 hours for this class. And usually like the first half of it was like lecture, and the second half was either like doing homework problems, or just problems that were assigned by the teacher in general, or doing like experiments or whatever. And so without fail, what this person did every single time, he was like a studious guy and he was in AP chemistry, and like he was on his shit, like he ended up getting into some good schools. He became like an engineer, etc. But he would just sleep through the entire hour and a half lecture. And then in the second half of the class where they had to do the problems, he would ask my other friends to explain to him everything that he had just slept through, like a Cliff Notes version, so he could do the homework. And they'd do it because, they were like helpful. They didn't want him to mess up. And they were like, okay, well, here's everything that we just learned and how you do all of this stuff. And it's also helpful to like do that, to like teach something to somebody else helps reinforce it, like the concepts in your own mind, right? But they're like, oh my God, again, like we got to give you the whole, just stay awake, asshole. So it was fine. So in that class, fast forward laterally to this other class that we were taking simultaneously. I wasn't in his chemistry class, but I was in AP statistics, and a couple of friends and myself were taking this AP stats class, and we were all in there with the normies who were just good at general school, but we were doing like high level academic competitions. We would always do, we went really hard in like the competitive math aspect of things. And so, we were very like full of ourselves academically, and we were also very curious, and we were also very into, just like cool shit. Like one of us would find out something interesting and then everybody would like tunnel vision onto it and we get a kick out of it. So that was my freshman year actually. We found out about TI-Basic. So TI-Basic is the programming language on graphing calculators where if you have like a TI-84 graphing calculator, the one that everybody has, or like related calculators, then you can put programs into it and you can make them do like almost anything, right? So for the most part, we all knew about this, and we were like playing around with it. But for whatever reason in the AP stats class, because the class was going so slowly and like the people who knew math already knew how to do pretty much everything, and it was really easy and boring for us, we just sat in the back and we played around with our graphing calculators. Yeah, it's a really easy language to get into, but it's not that powerful. But we found a way, as we were fucking with these programs, to run like a shell program. We wrote a program into the calculator that made it seem like there was no program running on the calculator at all. And The effect of the program was just to retain all functionality of the program, or of like the graphing calculator, but anytime you did any mathematical operation on the calculator, it would add a random value, a random decimal value if there was like a decimal, or a random integer if the result was an integer, and then spit it back out to you. And so it just made it like pretty much unusable. And it was really insidious because it was hard. If you turned off the calculator, we figured out a way to like, you know, to pre-scan like the inputs. And if you turned it off, the program wouldn't actually turn off. The only way to turn off the program, there was like a way to do it, but if you didn't know the way to do it, then taking the batteries out didn't even work. You had to take out like the little battery that would reset the RAM of the calculator. So it was this program that made the calculator useless and was like super hidden. So like if you, especially if you were doing like a volume or anything like in statistics or whatever, and the answer was like 3.56, it would spit you back out like 5.21, and you would run the same thing again and it would be like 2.78. Like it was really fucked up. And so we had a lot of fun with this, and we like passed it around, and it was just funny to see. It was like 1 + 1, enter, and it would give you like 5, and then you do like enter again and it would give you like -3. It was great. And it looked like nothing was running. It was just like, wow, this calculator is fucked. So, you know, my buddies and I recreated this program in this chemistry class. And in that class, the teacher had a bunch of graphing calculators that she would like distribute for everyone to use who didn't already have one, right? The better way to do that is to have it check a history. So if it's an exact command it's done before, it gives the same wrong answer. Great idea. We hadn't gotten there yet. That was like a bit too advanced. So we made this shell program that gave like spat out the wrong answer, right? We were so brutal to this kid. This guy, he was notorious for always borrowing his friends' graphing calculators. He like never had one on him. Even though he had one, he just like left it in his locker or at home or whatever. He like forgot to bring it. He slept through all of the lectures, like all this shit happened. So there was an exam coming up. And you know, one of like many, because exams happened like every few weeks for like each unit. And there was like a part of usually the last part of the exams was like when a calculator was necessary. And so my friends recreated this program on one of the public calculators that the chemistry teacher had before the exam. And they kept it like with them, anticipating that this friend of ours would ask for a calculator before the exam. And they just waited for him to like wake up and be like, oh, it's exam time. Like, does anyone have a calculator? And they're like, yeah, friend, here's a graphing calculator for you to use. You dumbass. Like, I can't believe you forgot your calculator again. He's like, whatever. And so they give him the calculator, and he uses the calculator that's got all the wrong answers that's put on it. And he doesn't fail the exam, but he's completely clueless, and he gets it like super wrong, and he ends up getting like a B or minus or something because the parts that require the use of a calculator he gets wrong, and like the multiple choice stuff he ends up getting right, which didn't require a calculator. So it wasn't like the end of his career or anything. It didn't like jeopardize his future, but he got like a B or a C or something on that exam. And he was like, what the fuck happened? Like, I can't believe this. And we're all like, haha, we got you. And he just didn't know, right? And he was like, I can't believe you assholes have done this. And we were like, bring your own calculator, stop falling asleep in class. You know, these are like the lessons we expect you to learn. So like, yeah, okay, medium hilarity prank has ensued. We all gave him shit for that for like years, and he was like really paranoid from then on. He like always brought his own calculator because he didn't want us fucking with it. I think we then like stole his calculator and replaced it with one that had the program on it again, but we didn't let him go into an exam with it. He just struggled trying to do his homework, and then he asked someone to like copy their answers, and they were like, yeah, well, it looks like your calculator doesn't work properly. And he was like, oh my God, you assholes. So, you know, it was a fun running gag, okay? The ultimate prank. Which is funny enough. I think it's a really good prank. Fast forward, like, 6 years, maybe. No, probably like 5 years. I have now graduated. I'm like a sophomore in college. And I went to college the same town that I went to high school. I receive a text from a friend of mine who I know who's still in high school. Or maybe he graduated and his sister is still in high school or something like that. And it's someone who I haven't like shared this with at all, who's like a few grades below me. And the prank I did with friends who were like a few grades above me. I'm just hanging out doing physics in like the undergraduate lounge. And I get a text from this guy who I haven't talked to in a while. Like 4 or 5 years later. And it's just like, hey, so I'm in Mrs. So-and-so's class, the chemistry room. And there's a graphing calculator that spits out the wrong answer anytime you tell it to do like any basic mathematical operation. Do you know anything about this? And I was like, no, that calculator has been fucking students over for like 4 or 5 years. We forgot to go back and fix the calculator, and it hasn't been fixed for like 4 years. These poor students had no idea what was happening to them, and they were getting the wrong. There was just like this possessed calculator that they finally discovered like something was off about. And it got around, and the go-to, none of these people knew the story or anything, but they were just like, this feels like something Cement might have done. And he texts me, and it was exactly what they were like, they called it. They called it and won. Dude, I felt so bad, but I couldn't believe that like the legacy of our shitty adolescent pranks was still terrorizing poor chemistry students like years and years later. Oh man. So there we go. Man, you're so much less evil than I was in grade school. I picked that story very carefully to be the right amount of incriminating and the right amount of time taken, because now these controllers are charged. But also I feel a massive kinship. Yeah, we were pretty much. I tried not to be actively evil. We had a conscience. I think at many times we took things too far. That wasn't really one of them.